Austin Shamblin served in the U.S. Army Air Force in the Pacific Theater. He worked as a communications officer in Hawaii, the Philippines, and New Guinea. I'm going to ask you some questions about your service in World War II.
Okay.
And if there's any information you'd like to add that are not in the questions, please feel free to do so. During World War II, what branch of service did you serve in?
It was actually the Air Force, but back then it wasn't the USAF. That was before they had a USAF. It was U.S. Army Air Force. Okay. That's when I first went in.
What was your rank?
When I came out, I was Lieutenant Colonel.
Where did you serve?
Mostly in the Pacific, all the way from Hawaii into the Philippines. New Guinea, I was in New Guinea, and spent quite a bit of time in the Philippines.
Why did you pick the service branch you joined?
Well, I always wanted to be a pilot, and my eyes weren't good enough to pass the eye test, so I figured the next best thing, was just join the Air Force.
Where did you do your basic training?
At, let's see, Tullahoma. I guess I went to Tullahoma, Tennessee first, and from there to Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. And I was there about a week, and then I went to Miami, Florida. And there was supposed to be 6 weeks training in Miami, but they were looking for radio operators, and so I agreed to go to, this was Scottsfield, Illinois at the time, to radio. Back then it was called ROM school, Radio Operator Mechanic. So I went to that school, and then when I finished up there, I was supposed to go to gunnery training, but they needed some instructors, so they kept me there as an instructor.
What do you remember most about your basic training?
KP. You know what KP is?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The first day I was in service, I spent 24 hours on KP. So they broke me in right.
What was your main job or assignment during the war?
Electronics. I was in, well, back then it was either electronics or communications. So I wound up becoming my MOS, which is Military Occupational Specialty, was 0200, which was Communications Officer.
Did you see combat?
Yeah.
What battles were you involved in?
I guess in New Guinea. I don't remember the name of the battles, but and also the Philippines. We had some. This was back when MacArthur, said, "I shall return." It was back during that time.
Tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences.
Well, I guess my most memorable experience was in the Philippines. There was a Filipino family there that I got acquainted with, and they'd invite me to come over and eat with them and whatnot. And I really enjoyed the family because over there, you were a long way from home and you didn't know anybody except people in service. So I enjoyed that.
Were you ever a prisoner of war?
No.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Well, just the normal run. I guess your theater of operations, you usually got a what we call a ribbon for that. And I don't know how I managed to get the good conduct medal. But most everybody, they give them the good conduct medal. And I had some other ribbons, but most of them were just theater operations.
Did you sustain any serious injuries?
No, I was fortunate. I was in a few skirmishes. I wouldn't call them battles, but I came through them okay.
How often were you able to communicate with your family?
Well, you could write them all the time. As far as calling them or talking to them or anything, there wasn't any way to do that where I was. Later on, you could. They had a few places where you could go and get to a phone, and call them, but not too much. Most of the time when I was in the Pacific, I had about the only contact I had with family was letter writing.
How did you feel when you got letters from home?
Enjoyed them. It's always good to get a letter from home. My mom didn't write too much, but my dad did. And normally it's the other way around, Normally the mother does the writing and the dad doesn't. But with me, it was sort of the other way around. Dad did most of the writing.
What was the food like?
Most of the time, the food was good. Once in a while, you'd get a meal, that you didn't particularly like. But if you were hungry, you didn't worry about that.
Would you tell me about any particularly humorous events that happened to you or someone you knew?
I don't really recall any humorous event that I can think of anyway. Most of the time, I'm sure there were things that happened that I don't remember, but most of the time things were pretty serious, so I can't recall any.
What did you think of your officers and fellow soldiers?
To the best of my knowledge, they were all real fine people. I can't recall serving with anybody that I wasn't real friendly to.
Did you keep a personal journal or diary? What do you recall about the day the war ended?
Well, let me think. The day the Japanese surrendered, I think at that time they had transferred me back to Hawaii, and I was sitting in a theater. And when the news came out, the theater shut down, and everybody took off to town or back to their barracks to celebrate. But can't remember. Of course, that's been 65 years ago. So, in that length of time, your memory loses a lot of things that happen.
What do you remember most about the day you went home?
Well, I didn't go directly home. I had to go to a hospital in Memphis before I came home. This was after I got discharged. I went to a Memphis hospital, and I was there, I guess, a couple of weeks, and then went home. So I don't remember a whole lot about it, except the people there were nice. Food was good.
Tell me about your close friendships while in the service.
Close friendships. There was one guy I recall that I went into service with. And before I went in, I didn't even know him, but we got to be real good friends. And his name was Jim Bergen, and he got shot down in a B-17 and got killed. He was, I guess, the only real close friend. Of course, I had a lot of friends, but he was probably the closest.
What did you go on to do as a career after the war?
Let me think. Right after I got out of the war, well, I was in the war 24 years. So that was pretty much a career in itself. And then when I came out, I came out to teach ROTC at a school in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I was, instead of teaching ROTC at that time, they needed a physics teacher and a math teacher. So I taught physics and math at Enloe High School in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about the military or the war in general?
Well, I'm sure that it did. I don't recall any particular instances, but I'm sure the time I spent in service influenced my life quite a bit.
How did your service and experiences affect your life?
Well, you receive some excellent training when you're in service, and I'm sure, I don't know any particular instance, but I'm sure it influenced my life all the way along.
Is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't covered in this interview?
No, I reckon not. Nothing that I can think of. Of course, all wars, I guess, are no good. But sometimes they come along and you just, back then, you know, I was real young. I was 20 years old. In fact, I joined the service on my 20th birthday, sworn in. And so being 20 years old, you know, back then, everything, you just go along with whatever happens to come along.
Well, thank you for coming and sharing your stories, and thank you for your service to our country.
Okay, thank you.